Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent, and this video is about the return of the Netherese. In an earlier video, we talked about the Netherese Empire and their floating cities. Then, due to Karsus's folly, magic stopped working for a brief minute, which caused all the floating cities to fall to the ground, and the Netherese Empire was destroyed. Their best and brightest destroyed in an instant. Except for one floating enclave, Thultanthar. It was saved from Karsus's folly by happenstance. Thultanthar was created in the year -1471 DR by the High Mage Telemount Tanthul, who was known only as Lord Shadow. He had been experimenting with the Plane of Shadow and prepared a spell that would shift the entire floating city into the Plane of Shadow. Because the entire city was phased out of Faerun, it was protected from Karsus's folly. However, what was supposed to be a trip of a few hours turned into weeks, as Lord Shadow was unable to shift Thultanthar back to the prime material plane. Eventually, magic repaired itself, and Lord Shadow tried successfully again, placing the city back in Faerun, but all of Netherese was gone at this point. They searched for survivors, floating over the ruins of their sister cities. Lord Shadow assumed it was the work of the Faerun, those odd magical creatures that were at war with the Netherese. Realizing one floating city could not take on an entire Faerun assault, he abandoned plans of revenge and instead took Thultanthar back into the Plane of Shadow to return one day and reestablish the Netherese Empire. Eventually, Lord Shadow found out what truly happened. Clerics with their divination spells were told what happened to Karsus and the Netherese Empire. Lord Shadow decided not to tell most of his subjects, keeping the information to noble families of Thultanthar. He also decided to keep the floating city in the Plane of Shadow indefinitely. Decades of being in the Plane of Shadow, the mythal that powered the city was infused with dark energy. It ended up working off of the Shadow Weave, the dark reflection of the weave created and overseen by Shar. Because of this, most, if not all, of the citizens of Thultanthar actually worship Shar. The people adapted to the dark energies of the Plane of Shadow and also were changed by it. The citizens of Thultanthar became twisted, dark humanoids referred to as Shades. As such, they don't resemble the Netherese much anymore and are commonly referred to as the Shadowvar. And Thultanthar itself is also known as the Shade Enclave. For 17,000 years, these Netherese lived in the Plane of Shadow and battled the Malagrim. Now, the Malagrim are powerful shapeshifters and became known to the people of Thultanthar as Shadow Masters. In their natural form, which is almost never seen, they appear as spherical creatures about 4 feet in diameter with 3 long, powerful tentacles tipped by razor-sharp hooks and a beaked mouth in the center of their bodies. They possess an innate levitation ability and hover in the air, whipping their tentacles around. Some legends claim that the Malagrims are descended from a human wizard named Malug, who was supposedly the first human of Faerun to enter the Plane of Shadow. These were just creatures on the Plane of Shadow, and more or less, the Netherese living here did not have an easy time. Now, in 1372 DR, Thultanthar returned. Lord Shadow, aka Telemount Tanthul, returned as High Prince and leader of the Shade Enclave. Well over 2 millennia old now, Telemount preserved his life by powerful magic, such as wish spells, but the process was made easier thanks to the Shadowfell. He was no longer human, but rather considered an outsider, and the natural lifespan of a Shade is many times longer than that of an ordinary human. We also need to discuss the reestablishment of Mythdraenor. Now, in my Mythdraenor video, I mentioned that the whole city was destroyed in 714 DR to demons. Known as the Weeping War, hordes of demons attacked Mythdraenor, and the city was overrun by this army of darkness. The ruins of Mythdraenor still radiated magic, and the elves kept it mostly secret, but word spread of relics and power within the ruins of Mythdraenor. So in 1374 DR, the Demon Fae invaded and relocated to Mythdraenor. The Demon Fae, also known as the Faerie, were the equivalent of tieflings to humans, I believe. They were crossbred elves and demons. During the Crown Wars, certain sun elves were summoning demons and bred with them in an effort to strengthen their bloodline. Most of these Demon Fae were wiped out during or soon after the Crown Wars, but a few still remained. The Demon Fae and their minions of orcs, ogres, and other monstrous humanoids launched an assault on the elves in the high forest of Everesca. They were mostly pushed back by the defenders and their allies, including forces from Evermeet and the Silver Marches. Afterwards, the Demon Fae suffered further defeats by the elves. They then moved their force into the ruins of Mithranor. There, they summoned thousands of devils and demons and were set on occupying Cormanthor and the nearby Dalelands. Now, in Everesca, the elf Severil Miritar discovered the Demon Fae were hiding out in Mithranor and wanted to retake the city and destroy them for good. He led his troops into the area and conquered the Demon Fae, retaking Mithranor for the elves. Severil was killed during the final battle inside Mithranor, but his daughter Ilseveli Miritar was offered the ruler's blade and she became the new coronal. Queen Amlaril came to congratulate the new coronal and brought with her the Tree of Souls, which was a tree the elves revered since the founding of Evermeet in the First Sundering, and she gave this as a gift to Mithranor. Up until now, in Faerun, the Shade Enclave was roaming around looking for ancient Netherese artifacts and building power. When the Spell Plague occurred, the weave was damaged, and the Shade Enclave kind of shifted gears. Their new aim in life was to transform the weave into a more stable shadow weave that was going to be under the control of Shar. Now, in order to do this, they needed an ancient mythal that was still connected to the weave, and the one they found happened to be in Mithranor. Mithranor now was no longer in ruins. It was a thriving city once again and had its mythal attacked by this floating city. In 1487, Thultanthar moved directly against Mithranor. Telemount Tanthal started draining the energies of Mithranor's mythal to turn the new weave, which was created in 1480, into a shadow weave. Now, we'll talk about this more in the Second Sundering video, but Elminster and some of the Seven Sisters were there defending Mithranor. Elminster won a duel with Telemount, and the resulting fight crashed the floating Shade Enclave into Mithranor. Some of Mithranor's protections via the Soul Tree held, but the city was partially destroyed. The Shades, the ancient Netherese, were wiped out as the city was destroyed, falling into Mithranor. And that's where we'll end today. Events all over the place now, so we'll be jumping back and forth in time for future videos. I'm sure there are some survivors of the fall of Thultanthar, but all in all, I think it's the end of the Netherese. Mithranor survives and is still a major city in the forest of Cormanthor. And that's all I've got for the rest of this video. Thanks again for watching, everybody.